I'll introduce the judges here, and then if you could do an introduction, then I'll have a narrative. I'm Doug Wolf, the senior judge here, and I hail from Loyola, California, and I work in real estate development.
Can you speak to the camera?
Okay. Hi, I'm Katie Dominici. I live in Los Angeles, California now, but spent the last 13 years in New York. I own my own consulting firm, but have, I'll just say, worked in a variety of industries, CPG, pharma, and media.
Good morning, Dan Koskovich. I'm a certified public accountant. I spent most of my corporate life as chief financial officer for private equity venture roll-ups, and in the process of doing lots of acquisitions and other things over the years, so spent a lot of my time dealing with many complex ethical issues.
I'm Ernie Roberts. I'm the head of global sustainability at Falcon. We're a consumer electronics and accessory brand. I have a huge interest in agriculture as well. I actually have an apple garden at home, so I'm excited to hear this.
I'm Eric Hoffman. I work in education technology. Right now we're specifically working on how AI will be incorporated into classrooms and education overall.
I'm Krash Halabusan, and I'm a philosophy major looking to go into law.
Hi, I'm Isabella Lamb. I'm also a philosophy major, but also economics major, going into law as well.
Nice to meet you all. My name is Jenna. I'm from Northern California as well. I'm a philosophy student and I'm going into investment banking. Thank you so much for having us.
And thank you for the introductions. As part of this competition, you are taking on a fictional business identity and assigning a fictional business identity to the judges. And I believe we are your board that you are presenting to. Please make sure, I'm sorry, we did our introductions. You have 25 minutes. Do you need help with the time at all, any countdowns?
Oh, I appreciate that, yes. Can we just get like a 5-minute mark and a 1-minute mark maybe?
Sure.
Perfect, thank you.
Do you mind to do that, Katie? Thank you, Katie. Will take care of that. Look for the 5 and the 2. And you'll be speaking uninterrupted afterwards. We'll have some questions for you with our, as a board, and then we'll offer feedback. So thank you. Please begin.
Hello, Costco Board of Directors. We are Helios Consulting. My name is Isabella. These are my fellow consultants, Kirash and Jenna. And today we're going to be presenting to you ICLF Farming, also known as Integrated Crop, Livestock, and Forestry Farming, and how you can implement it into your business model, which might sound a little bit strange because you guys are a retailer, not a farmer. But yeah, we were very excited that you decided to have us here in order to present on this ethical issue that is actually quite prevalent in our farming industry today. It's incredibly important in regards to climate change, in regards to environmental degradation, and we're highly excited to present this plan to you guys, and that you guys are excited to have us here to hear our plan on sustainability. Before getting into the specifics of ICLF farming practices and how you are supposed to implement it into your business model, we first wanted to ask the question of what role does Costco have to play in encouraging sustainable farming practices in general? Now, you guys released in 2024 a climate change plan stating that you would decrease greenhouse gas emissions from your company by 20% by 2030, which is an incredibly great goal, and we'd like to applaud you guys as a corporation for deciding to take such a proactive role. In your climate change plan, you also mentioned the UN sustainability principles, number 12, responsible consumption and production, and number 13, climate action. And out of both of these sustainability principles, we believe that our solution would greatly help you with this. Climate change is and we're excited that you're addressing these issues because climate change is probably one of the most pressing problems that humanity will have to deal with in the future. If you're looking at rising sea levels, if you're looking at the fact that we're going to have extreme weather changes, we might be seeing large migrations of people sometime in the near future. We might have trouble with the fertility of our land if we continue having unsustainable farming practices. And unpredictable weather patterns in general are just quite difficult to deal with, so we're happy that you are trying to address this ethical problem. So Costco as a corporation has the potential to make an enormous positive impact if they decided to take a proactive role in this. You guys have 125.5 million members all over the world. You partner with thousands of global suppliers with you as their primary customer. And because you are their primary customer, you have a lot of leverage in deciding and telling them, hey, we want to prioritize this type of farming practice, and we would hope that you as a supplier would try to engage in this type of practice. And in general, you can be a leader in the fight against environmental degradation, given your huge influence over your millions of members and your thousands of global suppliers. So we'd also like to look at the alignment that this climate change plan has with your mission statement and your code of ethics. Now, your mission statement is to continually provide your members with quality goods and services at the lowest possible prices. But in fulfilling your mission statement, you also have a lot of other ethics that you need to obey. Here's your code of ethics, which is to obey the law, to take care of your members, to take care of your employees, and to respect your suppliers. Now, what better way to take care of your members, suppliers, and respect your members, employees, and respect your suppliers than to take care of your world? Without the world on which we grow our food and which we want to protect our environment, how are we supposed to properly take care of your members? How are we supposed to properly take care of your employees and respect your suppliers? And you guys need to acknowledge this too. For Costco to thrive, the world needs to thrive, and you guys are committed to doing your part to help. And you guys don't have all the answers, but that's why you call us here. So this is a good step towards a sustainable future and clearly aligned with Costco's mission statement of taking care of their employees and customers, and we're so excited that you guys came out with your climate change plan. Now, let's take a look at your current progress with this plan from 2024. Now, in most of your plan, you guys are focused on your scope 1 and 2 emissions, which are emissions that you guys have direct control over. This is going to be things such as your operations, making sure that your warehouses are supplied with clean energy, and also making sure that your vans are electric, your delivery vehicle are running on biofuel rather than diesel. But the problem is that your scope 1 and 2 emissions, which you guys have direct control over, only make up 3% of your emissions. If you guys want to meet your 20% climate change reduction goal by 2030, we are going to have to take a look at your scope 3 emissions, which are going to be emissions that come from your supply chain. These are emissions that you do not have direct control over. These are choices that your suppliers make. And but we will have to start looking at these scope 3 emissions if you want to meet that 20% goal that you guys have stated in your plan. Now, we at Helios would like to believe that scope 3 emissions aren't as unavoidable as we might first think. You guys have a lot of control over the types of businesses that you want to work with. You have a whole team seeking to work with small businesses, diverse suppliers, and we would recommend that you start handpicking your suppliers, both to address scope 3 emissions and also to prevent a lot of other things that environmental degradation, harmful things that environmental degradation can do, such as deforestation and farmland degradation, making sure that the land is fertile, whatnot. So this is why we want you guys to focus on food and related goods for your scope 3 emissions. Food products and other sectors related to food products make up 60 to 65% of your total sales. So the focus on this majority of your sales is probably going to make a large dent in your scope 3 emissions, focusing on the types of suppliers that you choose these food products from. And because of this, we believe that agriculture addresses the root cause of concerns with environmental damage, with greenhouse gas emissions, which you guys are highly concerned with in your climate change action plan. And yeah, this is why we will be focusing on agriculture and ICLF farming and sustainable farming practices in general. I will be passing the mic off to Jenna, who will be talking more about the specifics about ICLF farming versus traditional farming practices that you tend to source your supply from.
Thank you so much, Isabella, for introducing the broad issue. Now, I'm sure as the board of directors, you're wondering, so what's the problem and how can I fix it? So we're here to give you these concrete solutions here at Helios Consulting. So we want to talk about the underlying issues to the problem that is the reason why scope 3 emissions are so high for Costco and why the suppliers are facing so many issues when it comes to environmental concerns. So the underlying issue right here that we're really focusing on is monoculture farms. So what are monoculture farms? As the name suggests, monoculture farms are farms that only grow one crop. And not only are we going to focus on monoculture farms, but we're going to follow along this track and focus on any sort of agricultural production that focuses on one thing, whether it be livestock or forestry or crops, etc. So, as we can see here, monoculture and other single practice farms make up 80% of the farms across the world. And this is because many farms obviously are going to prioritize efficiency and saving costs. So, on first glance, focusing on sending all of your supplies and production to one thing seems to intuitively make the most economic sense. But we'll show throughout this conversation why this may not be actually the case. So, not only are global farms using monoculture and other single common farms, but specifically in the United States where there is that primary focus on growing one crop, producing one thing, we see this obviously very common. So, we're going to talk about why these farms may actually not be financially sustainable or ethically sustainable, ecologically sustainable, etc. So, the underlying issue, farming in general makes up 10 to 11% of global greenhouse gas emissions, but monoculture farms take up the majority of this because they are both so common and because they use more greenhouse gases than other sort of integrated farms, which we'll talk about later. So, greenhouse gas emissions of all types are 32% higher in monoculture farms. So if we're seeing that monoculture farms are already making up 80% of global farms, then this 32% higher is just exacerbated. So we see that there is heavily, very high greenhouse gas use in these farms. And another reason that this is the case is because monoculture farms have to use many synthetic fertilizers. Think about it. If you have a farm and there are animals and plants on it, the animals can naturally fertilize the crops. If you don't have these animals on a monoculture farm, you have to use synthetic fertilizers to make up this fertilizer. And these synthetic fertilizers often have a lot of harsh chemicals that degrade the soil. And this degradation of soil not only releases more greenhouse gases into the air, but it's actually less sustainable in itself because you're going to have to keep on replenishing the soil, which is a negative cycle in itself. So, in addition to create a monoculture farm and other sort of single quality farms, you're going to have to clear out all the forests that are in that area. And clearing out those forests in itself releases a lot of carbon and other greenhouse gases into the environment. So you're already seeing a pattern here as to why these Section 3 emissions are so high. In addition, you're seeing a lack of ecological diversity because when you're growing one crop with all these synthetic fertilizers, you're getting rid of a lot of the ecological diversity in that land, clearing out swaths of forest, etc. I hope you're seeing the pattern here. In addition, you have to use synthetic feed to feed the animals, which causes a lot of health problems in their animals, as well as increased antibiotic use, which is actually detrimental to the health of those who are consuming these animal products. So not only are we seeing why it is harmful to the animals, harmful to the plants, how it can actually impact humans as well. All of these are issues that Costco obviously has some serious concerns over. If we're able to advertise as Costco how our meat is more ethically sourced, has less health concerns, etc., these all seem beneficial. But obviously we're here to talk about the money, so we're also going to talk about if this is cheaper as well. So, one of the reasons that we wanted to bring up monoculture farms in general is because of a very prominent case study with Tropicana. So I'm sure you're all familiar with Tropicana orange juice. One of the reasons that they're so successful in a household name in grocery stores is because they're so uniform. You see it everywhere, you know what it's going to taste like, it has one orange. This seems very, natural to you. It's a household name, etc. However, we're going to talk about why this may not be as intuitive as it seems. So Tropicana is based out of Florida. As I mentioned, it has that one orange that they're using to create it. But the issue with growing one crop in one place is that one disease or pest that it's susceptible to can wipe out the whole farm like that. And we actually saw this happen just last year. So this HLB, known as the citrus screening device, took over these farms in Florida and wiped out 70% of the oranges that Tropicana was using instantly. And so, because of this, Tropicana had to force international outsourcing to countries such as Mexico and Brazil. Funnily enough, they had to switch from these monoculture farms to what's more common in these other countries, which is ICLF, which we'll talk about later. So by outsourcing, sorry, can you go back to the last slide real quick? Thank you. By outsourcing, their supply chains were destroyed, took a serious economic impact to them, and now they have to rush back to recover as soon as possible. So now I'd like to present the solution. The solution is integrated crop, livestock, and forestry systems. So as you can see, it's pretty intuitive. It's a farm that has all four, or at least even 3 or so of such aspects. So as long as they have crops, forestry, and livestock, and the fourth category in this spot would be another sort of crop rotated in at once. So as long as it has at least 2 or more of these systems, ideally all 4, that's what we call an ICLF farm. Another fun fact that I'd like to share about ICLF farming is the fact that the trees are present in itself. In this example, presents shade for the cows, which actually allows them to be more comfortable, causing improved animal welfare, which we actually see manifest itself as increased productivity in terms of increased reproductive rates for the cows and higher milk production. So it kind of just seems like a compounding effect in itself of the benefits, which is another benefit in terms of sustainability in ICLF farming. So, ICLF farming actually has a reduced carbon footprint. Now I'd like to specifically talk to you about the issue, or the benefits of ICLF over conventional agricultural practices, whether those be monoculture farms or any sort of farms that just have one sort of like either livestock, forestry, etc. So, we actually see with farms in Brazil that the whole farm itself isn't even ICLF. If we see 15% of a farm integrating these factors, that can actually carbon neutralize the whole farm in itself, which obviously is a very significant impact. So, just to kind of visualize this out for you, there's a whole farm, 15% of it has cows, forestry, livestock, the plants feeding the cows, etc. That can make the whole farm carbon net zero. So obviously we can see that this is a very appealing way to reduce the forestry emissions for you as Costco. In addition, there is improved soil fertility because the livestock is able to fertilize the soil, which means that there's no need for these synthetic fertilizers and the negative health effects that come with that. In addition, it allows for enhanced water retention, which can make it cheaper for you all as well because you're not going to have to pay to keep on bringing water in to the source. In addition, it encourages preserving the habitat and making use of the land that's already there instead of completely cutting it out and bringing in entirely new resources, as well as balancing and preserving the existing ecosystem. In addition, as previously mentioned, there is increased livestock productivity. So we're actually using the whole average of Brazil rather than a very narrow case study for this. For the ICLF farms in Brazil versus the individual livestock farms, they actually have 80% higher productivity in milk and beef production in general. We can also see how there is increased animal welfare because there is a 37.5% increase in cow reproductive rights for those cows in Brazil. And even more so than just creating more milk and more beef, we can actually see how this is a direct increase in animal welfare and thus sustainability as well in the ICLF farms. So now we're going to talk about a very direct cost comparison between ICLF and conventional agricultural farms. So while it is true, yes, one of the reasons that the United States and other countries have not completely adopted ICLF farms is because it seems intimidating at first. It's expensive to bring in all this new infrastructure and kind of like reset the way things are already have been done for so long. And that's what we see as a problem in a lot of just areas of sustainability in general. People don't want to restart, people don't want to put the money in, that seems intimidating at first. However, we're going to talk about why it pays itself off very fast. As we can see with ICLF farms in Indonesia, several studies show that these higher infrastructure costs pay themselves off in only 5 years. So I'm assuming that Costco has plans in more than 5 years, and 2030 is when they want to get their carbon goals met, and that's more than 5 years away. So yes, while the cost may seem intimidating at first, we show why there is a tangible return on investment and why that's so important. So, and the reason that ICLF farms pay themselves off is because they're able to cost share among all the different aspects of the farm, sharing the resources among the farm, etc., as well as taking advantage of the resources that are already there and the ecosystem that's already there. That can save you money costs in itself. And once those costs are shared, we see a reduced production cost of 54%. In addition, ICLF farms in itself are less susceptible to any sort of economic downturn, whether it be natural disasters or the disease or pests that we saw in the Tropicana example. If the farm is all together, you're not going to see crops wiped out like that because you're just sharing crops. Crops aren't susceptible to just one disease. There's more resilience to any sort of economic effect that causes entry towards the farm. Now I'm going to pass it back on to my colleague Isabella.
So we just talked about why ICLF farms are so great, but the question is how is Costco supposed to implement this into their model? Again, you guys are not farmers, you guys are retailers. Well, as we said earlier, you guys have a lot of control over the type of suppliers that you guys have. And a part of the thing with having control over your suppliers is that you want to get ICLF farmers into your produce section. And part of this is going to have to involve incentivizing your suppliers. Costco has a general policy where suppliers need to generally give a 15% discount or offer in bulk their produce compared to other retailers. So for example, if you are selling to Walmart and you are selling for $100 per unit, Costco wants a 15% discount, so they want $85 per unit. So we want to lessen we would suggest lessening the discount required for ICLF suppliers just to encourage them to supply to Costco to try and get more ICLF source goods into the produce section, especially given the cost reductions. It might very well be the case that Costco might not end up having to pay so much extra money, especially because over the long run, ICLF does tend to be cheaper for farmers. Additionally, we need to make sure that there is accessible infrastructure to verify whether farmers are ICLF verified. There are a lot of other infrastructures for other types of labels, such as organic farming, whether it's palm oil certified, there's no inhumane labor required in the production of the produce. However, we don't really see a label for ICLF, and Costco could be one of the first brands to actually take initiative in making sure that there's a verification process. There are third-party verifiers that are involved in this, such as ICLF Network, who make sure that the farms are ICLF run and have neutral carbon sequestration and things such as that. And yeah, I'm going to pass it on to Kiraj, who will be talking about further financial benefits of implementing the solution into your business model and any other legal concerns that might arise because of this.
Okay, so aside from the environmental impacts of ICLF farming, there's also just some direct financial impacts that Costco would reap as a result. So as you may have noticed so far, ICLF is a form of vertical integration. And so Costco would, by extension, reap a lot of the benefits of vertical integration itself. By producing a lot of the supply inputs in-house, the farmers would then be able to both rely on themselves solely without relying on third parties that are susceptible to being wiped out by any given pests. And also, there's just more general macro level stability of the market. Because each farm would be relying on itself, the market would be less susceptible to sudden shifts in whether it be price of inputs, price of outputs, or any other economic indicator. Furthermore, there's also some economic and consumer level brand image improvements that Costco could reap. So on the economic level, ESG, which stands for Environmental, Society, and Government, is an indicator that a lot of companies and nonprofits use, specifically asset management companies use, in order to rate whether a given stock is performing well to reduce its environmental impact. And so by doing this, Costco would be directly benefiting its stock, both in the eyes of asset managers, but also benefiting its image in nonprofits. Furthermore, its consumer brand would also be improved heavily in threefold. Firstly, it would be since the food is healthier and comes from natural fertilizer as opposed to synthetically dry fertilizer, a lot of people would be attracted to the produce that Costco would sell as opposed to, let's say, Walmart or Target that would engage in monoculture practices. Furthermore, ICLF, as said before, is an environmentally conscious practice, so the sectors of society that are concerned with environmental impact would be attracted towards Costco as a result. And finally, there seems to be, at least in recent years, an appeal to traditional farming practices that predate the Industrial Revolution and monocultures. We can see this in high-end markets like Whole Foods and Erewhon, which present themselves as this kind of farmer's market aesthetic, and which engage in practices that seem appealing to wealthier younger generations. With that said, now we want to explore some legal considerations before Costco goes heading to ICLF. The main legal considerations are regarding Costco's use of its monopsony power over its suppliers. Monopsony here just means in inverse of monopoly, where a supplier, in a monopoly, suppliers have undue leverage over a market. In a monopsony, demanders or customers have undue leverage over the economy. And so here, Costco has two specific concerns. Firstly, sector-specific disruptions. So as my colleagues mentioned earlier, enacting ICLF across a bunch of farms will have some short-term capital requirements that could disrupt the market on the short term. Furthermore, there's just general issues of antitrust, where the government could step in to kind of regulate Costco and say that, no, you can't really leverage these small entities, and we've seen this done before in various antitrust cases. Now, one case that is relevant to our proposal is an ongoing case that was filed late 2024, and it's where 11 states, including Texas, Alabama, and Illinois, filed a lawsuit against BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. In this case, they allege that the coal production in Northeast United States was impacted heavily by the environmental regulation of these asset managers, and so the government is trying to step in here to protect the consumers of coal, which in the Rust Belt are plenty. Next slide, please. So the reason this case has any merit and is relevant to ICLF farming in general is because, much like the co-production in this case, Costco would be leveraging the farms, which would be parallel to the co-production plants, to produce a type of environmentally friendly type of produce. And so, and furthermore, since Costco isn't a sole owner of these farms, a lot of people will be questioning whether Costco has even a right to say whether these farms should be going one way or the other. So, is this really a problem? We don't really think so. Firstly, because at the regulation level, this case really only has merit because these coal production facilities aren't entirely owned by BlackRock or Vanguard or State Street, and so the government is trying to say that if you're not owning a given company, then you don't really have a say in whether a company practices environmentally friendly practices or not. Furthermore, Costco already has a lot of leverage over its suppliers within its business practice. Its business practice is effectively built on leveraging its suppliers, whether it be by enacting USDA organic products across the shelves, which are very competitive to get into, whether it be in its heavily curated product catalog, which really only features 1 or 2 products of a given type. If you ever go to Costco and where you refer to a given cookie from Costco, it's very common for people to say the Costco cookie or the Costco hot dog. This is because Costco really only has 1 or 2 types of a hot dog or cookie, so their product catalog is heavily curated. And finally, Costco, as my colleagues briefly mentioned, has a lot of exclusivity clauses in their contracts with their suppliers. These exclusivity clauses vary in type. Some are an exclusivity of relationship with the supplier, an exclusivity in the product type that the supplier gives to Costco, or an exclusivity in the price supplied at. And so, in this case, promotion of ICLF is really no different than Costco's already pre-established business practice.
So I'd like to finally cover some further ethical concerns. It seems like Costco is within their right to choose which suppliers they want to supply from, at least on a legal level, but there are some ethical responsibilities that we do want to remind Costco of. You guys have been generally respectful of suppliers. Suppliers love working with you. Suppliers are vying to get on your shelves because they love working with you so much. But again, you guys do promise to respect your suppliers and your code of conduct, and this means having transparency and communication about new expectations regarding sustainable farming, regarding ICLF. And this is especially important because Costco tends to supply from small suppliers, and they tend to be the primary customer, and a lot of these businesses are highly reliant on Costco's business. So it's good to practice due diligence when adjusting your expectations. A sudden shift in expectations is not easy for a lot of smaller farmers and businesses to adjust to. And this is even if Costco is legally free to choose whoever to purchase from. And generally, yeah, it would just be good to keep your motto of respecting your suppliers when trying to promote ICLF farms.
Yeah, so I'd just like to say a few concluding words. Thank you so much to my colleagues. So we just really wanted to emphasize the point that Costco can make an extreme and enormous positive impact on the environment by simply prioritizing purchases from food suppliers that practice ICLF. We're not asking you to shift over the model completely, we're just asking you to encourage this in order to reduce your Section 3 emissions and accomplish your climate goal by 2030. So, not only do we show the ecological and ethical benefits of ICLF, we also showed how it can actually benefit your pockets as well as improve your relations with suppliers. Not only does ICLF have various financial benefits and will lower long-term supplier costs and lower the cost for Costco as well, and we also shared some legal concerns, but as long as Costco continues to follow its code of conduct and respect its employees, its suppliers, and its customers, Costco will be able to implement these ICLF practices while maintaining and even improving its excellent reputation. So we'd just like to thank you so much for having us here to speak with you. We sincerely hope that you implement our suggestions, and we hope you have a wonderful day, and we're open to taking questions, and we'd love to hear them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very informative. Having grown up in Amish country, you're preaching to the choir, and it's been getting you all of the time. So thank you. I wanted to touch on you on the ethics portion. From what I gather, is the ethics is more in how you treat the suppliers than the overall sustainability, which is very compelling. Is that the case?
Yeah, so I think that they're kind of twofold. I think that there's kind of this macro level vision with ethics where you want to take care of the world, small impact on a lot of people. But also there are some maybe not so much legal obligations towards their suppliers, but a lot of ethical obligations, and that Costco gives projections of, hey, we're probably going to buy this much from you in the future. This is not a promise, but it's an estimation. And a lot of suppliers might revolve their business model around trusting that Costco is willing to make that purchase in the future. So I think it's important that if Costco were to switch over suppliers or start saying, hey, if you don't start implementing some type of integrated farming technique into your farming, then we might have to switch to a different supplier who does so. It would be good to give them due notice. Make sure to inform all your suppliers of your future plans. But yeah, I think the ethics is twofold, respecting on a macro level the planet and respecting on a micro level your suppliers and customers.
I also want
Go ahead. Yes.
I also want to emphasize in terms of you asking about the ethics in addition to the animal welfare. That's something that we would definitely consider to be a primary ethical issue, and by feeding these animals more healthy food and thus requiring less use of antibiotics, we're actually treating the animals better, which we can see in terms of the statistic that I mentioned in terms of the increased reproductive rates. In addition, less antibiotic use for these animals causes the meat from these animals to better improve human health, which we would consider an ethical concern as well.
Thank you, I appreciate that, because the suppliers are our partners. We need to keep the trust and the respect with them, and then manage how we migrate from that. And by introducing livestock, one of the biggest contributors to the world methane is livestock, so that's another problem to tackle, and there's solutions to that too that we can discuss later. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just curious in terms of, it seems to me that there's a bit of an ethical dilemma here, that we're from a position to not really absorb any of the cost, bullying down to the suppliers a requirement to make changes to their production techniques. And as you clearly stated, whether it's subtle or whether it's not, when we hint that that will be important, it's fairly clear that if a farm sold 80 or 90% of their produce to us, that we're bullying our way and saying, you can do it or your neighbor can do it, but is there any kind of an ethical dilemma in the fact that we're forcing behavior on people that isn't really going to be an economic cost that we have to bear?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely an ethical dilemma, which is, and it's something that we were concerned about. And we do want to note that Costco will have to have due caution in implementing this plan. Again, saying in the future that there will be an emphasis on this is important, but also making sure that you're not completely cutting off the suppliers. We did mention maybe they would just have to not have the beneficial discount that ICLF suppliers have if they decide not to implement this technology. Not so much necessarily cutting them off, simply saying, hey, there are some perks that we want to give to ICLF suppliers. If you don't want to have these perks, that's fine, but we will continue supplying from you, and maybe we will reduce the amount that we supply from you because we start prioritizing ICLF suppliers, but we don't plan to completely cut you off. I think would be good to communicate to any suppliers that rest on your business.
Also, I want to add that bullying, I can definitely see the point you're trying to make, but I don't think it's necessarily bullying here, because our stated goal is that we want to broaden our environmental impact. We're not necessarily trying, although there might be peripheral benefits that benefit Costco in the long run, Costco would also have to, at least in the short term, pay extra for a lot of these supplies. And so we're not doing this to just benefit ourselves, or we're not proposing this to benefit Costco itself. We're also trying to pursue an altruistic mission, which is both important to us in living within this planet, but also important in keeping livestock welfare and producing healthy, good plants.
Yeah, okay, so I'll just have my follow-up question is, Costco is a for-profit company. We have a fiduciary obligation to our shareholders to make money. You mentioned about the payoff in Indonesia, and it's been a 5-year payoff. Do you have any data about the investment that was put in there, or the financials of that? And just so we kind of understand the business case of what the investment would be to get that 5-year ROI.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't have the exact statistics to you as to how much that costed, but obviously I will grant that that is a smaller case, and that's why we've seen ICLF farms at this point mostly exist in smaller countries with a lower economic market. However, we do believe that this will be able to be implemented. Costco has the resources and the funds, and we believe that taking the first step as such a prominent company that has the ability to make this investment at first, I believe that this 5-year payoff is not only manageable, but we can actually potentially exceed it. But definitely tomorrow we will get to those exact facts in order to further benefit our argument.
I do have some further things to note on that, which is that you guys do shelve organic produce, which is more expensive as well. I'm not sure if you guys have the same discount rate that we're talking about, but it does seem like your customers to an extent are okay with higher prices if they are getting higher quality goods. So perhaps you guys could make up for profit in that aspect as well. Along with the case that ICLF farms do pay themselves off in the long run, we're not expecting that you as Costco subsidize your suppliers with their initial costs. We're simply saying, hey, if there are suppliers who happen to do ICLF, or if your suppliers are willing to do ICLF, you do a slight discount for the rate that you want, the discount rate, exclusive discount rate that you want from these suppliers. So the initial costs are important, but I don't know if they will directly impact Costco in the short term. Yeah.
And we'll have a concrete plan for you tomorrow as to how exactly that will work.
So it does seem that ICLF significantly is shown, I just want to be very clear on it, to reduce. Can you state exactly what it reduces? Is it carbon output or soil degradation specifically?
It's kind of all of the above. So the soil degradation in itself, having constantly replenish that soil, when that soil degrades, it releases carbon into the atmosphere. As is the case when you clear off forests, that also releases carbon into the atmosphere. In addition, the synthetic fertilizers used release nitrous oxide into the atmosphere, which is also a very potent greenhouse gas. So it's kind of all of the above. I know that's a very broad answer, but I actually believe that to be even more convincing because all of these different factors release a little bit more greenhouse gas into the air, so it's kind of a cumulative, significant impact.
And so if we're going to convince our suppliers about making this change, to your point, maybe not through bowling, but through saying, hey, ultimately this will be better for your farms, but then again, their costs will rise. And so it's, for us, we're going to have to say, hey, it will actually be a net positive for the environment, but is there any consideration of convincing the suppliers about this as a net positive and their pushback and saying, actually, no, these factors, as in soil degradation or certain kinds of outputs, actually may be on the rise if we implement these changes. Is there any consideration there of supplier pushback?
Yeah, so I think an important note is that a lot of the farming industry right now is relying on tradition rather than new techniques, and there is something to consider the fact that with traditional farming, monoculture farming, you have a lot of high-cost inputs that you have to constantly keep supplying with synthetic fertilizers. You further degrade the soil, meaning that the microbiome of the soil is destroyed, and then you have to re-supplement this with synthetic fertilizers, and you have to keep on doing this, and the cycle keeps getting worse. You often see in these farms that a completely arid farmland because they just keep on supplying with synthetic fertilizer, and these costs do add up. So I think part of it is actually convincing suppliers that, yes, it's more expensive in the short term, but maybe in the long run it's actually not as bad as you think it is. And you're also talking about increased pesticide use with the fact that monoculture farms are more prone to pesticides, and maybe they can reduce costs in this area as well. I think part of your mission as Costco is convincing your suppliers, hey, we're giving you a financial incentive, and also your costs are not going to be as drastic as they seem just because they differ from your current standard of farming.
So, Mike, go ahead.
Sorry. I also want to add that there's a benefit of security that a lot of these farmers would be feeling. Since both from the level of these farms being prone to pests or diseases, and also on the level that there's a lot of price fluctuations, especially around various seasons or various weather events that could affect the agricultural market. But if these farms produce a lot of their inputs in-house, then they wouldn't have to rely on third parties which are susceptible to their own problems. And so there's a degree of security that these farmers would feel, and it's kind of an incentive for the farmers to kind of be self-sufficient and independent rather than rely on the market.
So as a board of directors and also as a Costco shopper, if I'm going into Costco right now, and one of the things that Costco is amazing at, which you touched upon, is quality compliance, ensuring that what we're procuring is what shows up on shelves. So right now I'm buying strawberries and it's from one farm. Now, if all these farms convert, does that mean I'm getting strawberries from multiple farms? Are we sourcing differently? And how does that flow into quality compliance?
Yeah, so a lot of these strawberries are kind of branded with the same brand, but they also, while they might end up having the same label, they might be sourced from several different farms. So, sorry, could you ask the question again?
So my question is that each farm, instead of only producing strawberries, now they have strawberries and raspberries and blackberries.
Yes. That was,
So and another farm down the road is doing the exact same thing. So I'm getting multiple things from multiple farms. How does that change our supplier relationships? How does that affect internal operations or quality compliance?
Yeah, there would probably be a little bit of legal paperwork that you have to do, making sure that, well, I guess that would be on part of the farms, making sure that they're okay with selling these new products that they're not offering because of the new farming model. I think that Costco has a lot of resources to help take care of that if suppliers are struggling with that, but
I guess what I'm asking is, does that mean that you're going to have more vendors because that you're going to be supplying less of one product from each farm? Is there efficiencies there? Like what is the vision, if there is one yet?
I want to point out that Costco is an international company. This is a company that has suppliers all around the world in different weather conditions, economic conditions, legal conditions. And despite that, Costco has been able to keep a consistent quality across its produce and its products. So I don't think this is as big of a challenge as it may have initially seemed. I think Costco has a lot of the logistic framework necessary to keep the quality across not only its various farms, but also across its global image as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. I really wanted to emphasize that we're not going to lessen our quality control measures in the slightest. We're going to maintain the current controls that we have. And what we do want to emphasize is the fact that these suppliers already have a method of transporting goods to Costco. And that responsibility wouldn't change in the slightest. So we would, to answer your question, maintain this quality control purpose, and assist in whatever ways possible in terms of this transition period. But in the long run, we definitely don't see any decreased efficiency or decreased quality control in the slightest.
yeah, to more directly answer the question, I think there would be an increase in the number of vendors, but given your rather large infrastructure dealing with suppliers, we have confidence you can deal with this transition relatively well.
Have you thought about some of the efficiencies that can be gained from your suppliers, where you're growing close to this, the market, farm to table, and so you have more natural, or perhaps holistic, and so some of the, if that's done, then how would you handle it on a broader scale, where you're looking at, like, okay, California's great, you can grow much longer season than perhaps in the northern Dakotas. And I was curious with some of the outlying Costco locations from where the food is actually grown, how that would be handled.
Yeah, certainly, yeah, some states will be specialized in producing one type of crop, and other states specialize in producing other types of crops. So we're not necessarily suggesting that it's like completely local, but simply that if you are growing only almonds, only produce, you are also supplementing this with having livestock on your farm and having forestry on your farm. But this does not mean that we can't have crop-specific regions to transport across the nation. Sorry, does that answer your question?
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll take off our board of directors hats. Costumes there, and offer you feedback. So thank you. Very knowledgeable, very informative. I can see your passion behind the subject matter, and for me, I appreciated how you were able to think on the spot when asked the questions and pivot. If you didn't know something, it's like, okay, I'm not going to BS my way through it. Let me get back to you. Let me get back to you very quickly. Your presentation was good. You looked relaxed. To way to upscale and make it even better would be to slow things down a little bit and a little more relaxed, less hand gestures per se. And then I've been through some trainings and words like obviously I was taught to say insert as any fool could see. And so when you think of those terms, it quickly helped me to keep things in check. Took some practice. But you're presenting to a corporate board, very professional, and so you can keep it on point like that, a different audience perhaps than you would be to your classmates. But well done, thank you, I enjoyed the presentation.
Yeah, just a couple of little things. I would agree with that. You probably needed to cut about a quarter of your content and just kind of slow down a little bit and let us absorb. That being said, the reason that it was so apparent, all three of you seem to be bursting with content, and even the way all three hands went out for the mic whenever a Q&A question came up, it's like everybody wanted to answer the question. And so it was very clear to me that all three of you were intimately aware of every element of it, and it was more than, it felt to me in your presentation style that this really meant something to each of you. It wasn't just an assignment that you got handed in to try to present. And so that's difficult to do. This is, I know in college standard time, this is still early in the morning, but all three of you brought an energy and an enthusiasm that was hard not to pay attention to. And with that being said, you all still paid attention to each other when you were talking, you weren't looking around, and all of us have made lots of presentations in our life. The hardest thing is every room you walk into is completely different. I thought you guys handled the mic really well, which not all of the presenter rooms are requiring that. That was a curveball. Even when we took one of the two mics away, you quickly readjusted your alignment. It didn't seem to bother you a bit. It seemed like you were just ready to go no matter what was presented. I thought that was really impressive. Just kind of piggybacking a little bit on what Doug did, I really appreciated the fact that all three of you had a very conversational style about how you presented. Just some of the transitions where you would put in little phrases and things. A lot of folks, it feels like, are going very hard off a note card. They're speaking very stiffly. And so I really felt that you were conversing with us. And that's not an easy skill to do, especially in a big, gigantic, empty room with a microphone in your hand. So on all the elements of the presentation, I thought you really exceeded. The only one teeny little thing, and it's so hard because we all speak this way, but Jenna, you have way too many you guys. You would never refer to a board of directors as a you guy. And so that's just, and it's so difficult. It's so difficult to do. It just comes out. But especially because we're so conversational, it's easy to fall into that trap. I didn't hear any ums, I didn't hear any uhs, I didn't hear anything like that. And so that was only one little tiny thing. But if you slowed it down a little bit, it would really help. But I just felt like if we gave you an hour, you guys would love to just keep on going and having more than you could share. So it was really well done.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Like, I think the energy in the room and the way you guys show up is amazing. We kept us engaged, we kept me very engaged and focused on the content that was being presented. I want to give you some constructive feedback. One of the things I was really looking for was what problem are we trying to solve? And I really kind of understood the business case, the ethical case of why the farming is so relevant for climate change and addressing the two, UNO 12 and 13. But on the business side of it, it looked like we were going to save the farm a lot of money But I didn't quite see how we were going to, actually how that was going to help us like be more profitable or be, keep our business case. We talked about reducing the 15% reduction, which is great. But well, actually, it was just not something boards like to hear, like how are we gonna, like do that. But I think more focused on the ROI or focusing on like how this is gonna make us more profitable, even on the marketing aspect of it or the or just the financial aspect of it. I think would have been really resonated with board members. And then the other side of it was on the legal side, we talked a lot about the ICLF certification. I would like to understand a little bit more about what that certification entails. What's the requirement for the farm, but also what is the requirement for the farm's customers, like the Costco or or whoever they're selling to. But other than that, like I think that it was really amazing, and like I can tell you're passionate for this stuff. I'm really passionate about it too. But I just wanted to make sure we put it into that context of like the business structure of what we were saying too.
Thank you.
Yeah, so awesome passion. Totally love that. And I love all three philosophy majors.
Yes.
Okay, cool. I was philosophy. So it's good to see philosophy.
First, you're a business label.
You know what? I'll tell you one, so I can speak from experience. I've been in, like I said, education technology and done a lot of these presentations in real environments. I have a master's in philosophy. I'll tell you, being more academically inclined and using philosophical language and then translating it into business, that's not easy. So it's commendable. But I'll give you some advice, and hopefully it can motivate you in your career. I think the passion is huge, and of course we got to think about these board members. A lot of the times they're coming with a lot of other considerations, or they've been in back-to-back meetings. So simplicity is king or queen here, right? So we got to make sure that everything is reduced down to stating the key problems. And I'll tell you, as a philosophy person in my personal and professional life, that is not easy. But just always keep that in mind of like an Occam's razor thing, where you want to keep it as simple as possible and present and state these problems really simply and give the solutions. Because you're probably thinking about all the relevant objections and that you're trained philosophically. And actually, part of what I've learned in business is defining the problem clearly for other stakeholders at a company is 90% of the task. So remember that. Focus a lot on defining the problem, defining the ethical dilemma, defining the ROI, and communicating that. And then your solution to the objections will actually naturally come once you understand the problem. So that's my biggest piece of feedback coming from someone who's trying to take philosophy into business.
And just my one last comment I forgot to mention, the one thing that I thought you did a really good job of was making it clear to us at the opening, we have the ability to make a huge impact. We are a big gorilla in this whole thing. And so if we're not willing to kind of push this, when we make a push, it's going to make a difference. If you go to a smaller retailer and say, you need to make this push, they won't even register on the radar screen. And so that really, from the board member, it was a nice feeling to be reminded, you guys really have the ability to make something happen. And that was a really great opening to the whole presentation.
I think you did amazing and had great enthusiasm as echoed by the other judges. I really liked how at the beginning you talked about not only, I think, the mission, but the vision of obeying laws, taking care of our employees, suppliers, or employees, members, and respecting suppliers. I worked in sales and revenue. I think you had the perfect open and close where you could have drawn it back to that. A lot of what was echoed, I agree with in terms of size of the prize. So if you simplify, what does this mean? Does this mean we're going after Whole Foods? Are we driving volume because now we're respecting our suppliers so much, so that's going to give us more members, we're respecting what they have? I think as a board member, I'm obviously financially driven. We've seen Costco in recent news do really well with who they identify as, and that's actually added a lot. I think you could have pushed that, and I think it would have been, for me as a board member, very good, that I can feel like I'm doing the right thing, but I'm also making sure that I'm taking care of everyone else. I'll echo, editing is really important. I think what I heard was passion and knowledgeable, and I commend you on a very complex topic and being able to deliver it very well.
Thank you so much for having us today.
Thank you.
For running down to the basics tomorrow and presenting the information that we missed out on today. Thank you.
It's a tough subject matter, is how do you incentivize the farmers to switch, and it's truly a partnership.
And no more you guys, promise.
That just comes with practice. No, get it. I was curious, is all you guys are philosophy majors? How did you choose that and this topic, and then what do you want to do with your career?
So I did,
Because I don't connect philosophy and farming other than creation.
I started my college career with economics. So the business ethics competition I've done 2 years ago in my freshman year. So when I transferred to my new school, I really loved the first experience that I had at IBESCC. It was really awesome. I loved working together. And it's kind of funny that last time in freshman year we also got a lot of comments about the energy, because I think my favorite part about IBESCC is the teamwork and having friends to do a presentation to, and I really wanted to bring that to my new university. So this is our first team for this first team ever, IBESCC team ever for this college. Yes.
I kind of have a similar background, although the name philosophy suggests that I
didn't even answer the question.
The feedback's done, just getting to know you a little bit.
Yeah, I was initially, throughout high school, in middle school, I was very much interested in politics. And from that you can't really do politics without economics. And then from that flourished the philosophy underpinning all of it. I was originally an economics major too, but as I transferred, I did philosophy as my major because I think it's just both very interesting, much more so than I thought economics was, because I thought by the end of my career in community college, I had basically lost my interest in economics and politics. And so I wanted to explore philosophy, at least in an academic setting. Yeah, and also, since I want to go to law school, I think philosophy teaches a lot of stuff that are helpful to law school.
I'm going into business, and I already know where I'll be working and everything, so I'm kind of just doing philosophy as a hobby because I really like it in college. So I need to get my business knowledge up because, I really just do philosophy because I like it. I know they're unrelated, and it kind of makes me requires me to do a little bit more work, but I'm genuinely interested in it, so that's why I do it.
I think that's wonderful, and just being curious and keep that all the way through your life.
Thank you.
And growing that way, and philosophy will help you in your business. It will help you understand people. It will help your approach, your personal skills.
Yeah.
And a couple classes, but that's it. But mainly, it's you learn it naturally. So.
Problem solving in general is something that philosophy really knows, and that's been useful in a lot of things in my life. So that's the other reason I do it.
Any other questions?
I think it's great. Obviously, for me, I think you can have a lot of success. Philosophy is you think about everything, go through all the imaginations in your mind that you can, and be as imaginative as possible and as speculative as possible. But when you're in the business environment, consolidate, make it simpler, simple. So always be thinking in the reverse when you go to business. But in your personal life, you can go and allow yourself to dream. And I think business, we definitely need that and that kind of innovation and a different kind of roundabout approach to problem solving and critical thinking and communication skills. Focus on that in the philosophy education, because that will serve you well in business. But make sure when you're then, it's different than speaking to philosophy professors when you're in the business environment. Just make sure to make everything as simple as possible. Think as much as possible about it, but then make it as simple as you can.
Thank you.
That goes for anything.
Yeah.
No matter what nature. It's if you can simplify and also really understand the problem.
Yeah, that's right.
And to your point, I was fortunate to go to a university that required us to take 2 philosophy classes as an accounting major.
Oh, good.
I have the accounting minor, so.
Okay, so as an accounting major, you were required to do that. And I've told this to many different students that I've talked to. A few years ago, I found a copy of my CPA exam. And I pulled it out, and I realized, leafing through it, at least 80% of the questions I got right on that exam aren't the answer anymore. The laws have changed, the rules have changed, the world that you're accounting for has changed. But almost universally, there were multiple times every year in a work environment, sitting in a board meeting, sitting in an investor meeting, sitting in places like that, where I realized I was the one voice at the table who was thinking about those ethics and those philosophy concepts. Those never changed throughout my entire career. And so, really, if I was to say, if I would have jettisoned 1 or 2 classes in my whole 4 years, I would have been in a real deficit if I had said, oh, this philosophy, what does that have to do with tax law and advanced accounting theory? But it turned out that in terms of business use, that information never got stale and those skills never went away. So there were many times when we were doing acquisitions and had to do large layoffs and other things where I was the one who really saw the faces of all the people that were going to be impacted, where everybody else saw lots of cells on an Excel spreadsheet. I was kind of the one who was doing that. So
That's impressive, coming from a CFO and finance.
I was a rare voice in many of our, you can imagine, when you're in Manhattan with a bunch of private equity guys sitting around the table, they heard me asking questions that didn't come up very often. So that's why I really think that an exercise like this is really important, because you're training your mind at a very young point in your career that little buzzer does go off lots of times throughout the rest of your life, and be just as enthusiastic and just as outgoing about defending those thoughts that you have in a professional environment, because honestly, I don't know what everybody else's experience is, but I didn't hear that voice in the woods all that often, and I think that as we get more automation and more AI and more of the underlying thought coming from electronic signals behind the brains, I think that the kind of skills that you're developing now are going to become even more valuable into the future. I think it's an incredible foundation to have.
I think that idea also just kind of shows up in our philosophy coursework as well, where I don't think there's any other major or any other field of study that seriously studies figures from thousands of years ago. It is only in philosophy where you read like Aristotle and you take Aristotle seriously, because a lot of the ideas that Aristotle posited are still very much relevant to today's problems.
We're not listening to the people who believe that the world revolves around Earth.
Helios,
Yeah, that all makes more sense now.